Hey everybody, welcome back to Daniel Davis's Deep Dive. We always want to show you what's really going on behind the scenes and what you really need to know that maybe you're not shown on major media. Now, normally we look at military kind of things, since that's primarily what the most of my background is in. And show you what's true, and what you need to know. Maybe it's something that if you haven't been in combat before, you might not even know. You might not even know to ask. But I am, and I'm able to, because I care about the guy, the regular guy, the people in the middle, not, the corporate media type people or the elites or whatever they think is important. I want to make sure that you know what's important for you to know about things that are happening in your world. We're going to take a little bit of a departure today, although it's still kind of related, because I want you to understand, things that are really going on. And when you see political campaign ads, it's good to have a little bit of realism mixed in there with it. You make sure that you understand what's really going on there, and then you can make your own choices. Now, look, I'll just tell you, as many of you know, or maybe you don't yet, I don't consider myself a Republican or a Democrat. I just consider myself an American. And so I care about what's best for our country. And that means that whoever's president, I want them to have the most success that they can, because if they're successful, the country's successful. So I don't reflexively go against a certain party or whatever, or even a certain person if I don't like them. I want the country to do well. So I always want the president to do well. However, if the president says something or that's a little bit off, I think it's important to point that out. And that's what's going to happen here. What you're about to see is a new campaign video for President Biden. And it has some, shall we say, some less than transparent claims in it. Let's look at the video.
It was the first time in modern history.
Very significant moment on the world stage.
That an American president went into a war zone not controlled by the United States.
A nearly 40-hour journey in and out of Ukraine.
President Biden left Washington, D.C. at 4 a.m. on Sunday. He landed in eastern Poland and then took a 9.5-hour train to Kyiv.
He entered Ukraine under the cover of night. And in the morning, Joe Biden walked shoulder to shoulder with our allies in the war-torn streets, standing up for democracy in a place where a tyrant is waging war to take it away.
Air raid sirens blared as the two men walked together.
In the middle of a war zone, Joe Biden showed the world what America is made of. That's the quiet strength of a true leader who doesn't back down to a dictator. Biden, president.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
Okay, so much to unpack here. Okay, look, first of all, let's just look at it. The president is the commander-in-chief of the United States Armed Forces. You don't need to hype that. It's a fact. You are. So that's just a mantle that you wear that everybody already knows. So you don't have to try to gin up some kind of military, bona fides or something to make people think more of you. But this just is very deceptive in the way it's talking about here, because there's all these imagery and videos to make it look like the president actually went into a war zone, that showed cannons firing, things blowing up, troops running around. Nothing close to that was the case. I mean, he took a train in the cover of darkness, as it said, which is not really something that you want to talk about when you're being bold. But nevertheless, look, some important caveats with this. That was clear with the Russians. They knew he was coming in. They were not going to, they're about to risk having any kind of thing go on with Biden, where some kind of accident could cause an international war to explode in between two nuclear powers. So we coordinated that action. It was not a surprise to the Russians. That air raid that it talked about in there, that was completely fabricated. There was no attack. As is self-evident in the video, when the sounds go off, you don't see anyone running for cover, because they all knew it was just for show to try to make it look more dramatic, which is completely unnecessary. Look, the fact that you're in Kiev at all should stand on its own merit. You don't have to hype it up. But for some reason, they felt the need to do that. And look, if you want to say you're the tough president or something, you're going to continue to go on until we succeed, as Biden says all the time. There's more to leadership than just saying, I'm going to be tough. And look, we have said so far, we're going to give Ukraine whatever it needs for as long as it takes. That's the mantra of Biden, has been for well over a year now, maybe even longer. But now evidence is starting to pile up that the offensive did not go as well this summer. In fact, it didn't go good at all. You can't make any kind of successful claim out of it. And it has exposed that with 6 months to prepare, and all of the weapons that the West cumulatively gave to them, all the training we gave, the millions of rounds of artillery shells, thousands of missiles, bombs, tens of millions of other ammunition, and thousands of different kinds of armored and combat vehicles. And yet, after all of that, Ukraine barely scratched the surface and had, to this moment, still has not penetrated beyond the first main line of Russian defense. And there are at least 3 more belts around there, and the Russians are digging more by the day. So there is nothing that has happened so far that has shown any possibility that Ukraine, with more ammunition and more weapons, can do more than they have now, because their casualties are now up over a couple of 100,000 at the very least. So to be leader means not just be tough, but also to be wise. And it's important for the United States people to recognize our interests are not synonymous with Ukraine's. Now, all of us certainly understand Ukraine was flat out invaded. Russia went in there, they killed thousands of their people. That should not stand. That violates any international law that there is. And by all rights, Ukraine should get their country back, and Russia should be required to leave. But there's also reality. That's what we all would like to happen. That's what Biden wants to happen. But the mark of a good leader says that if I can't get what I want, then I have to do the best that we can to preserve as much as we can for Ukraine. Now, in that video, the statement is that Biden went shoulder to shoulder with our ally. Ukraine is not our ally. Ukraine is the country that we're helping. It's crucial to understand they're not a NATO ally, which carries Article 5 obligations. There are no such obligations here. There is nothing going on in Ukraine. Let me just categorically state this, and I know this is going to make a lot of people unhappy, but it's the truth. There is nothing in Ukraine that is worth one American soldier dying or getting us drawn into a war that could potentially go nuclear and devastate American cities. Now, we're nowhere near that right now, and it should never get that far. But if you continue to support Ukraine as long as it takes with no caveats, the chances of them winning are virtually non-existent. But the chances of them one day collapsing and Russia actually gaining more is higher than the possibility of things going on. A good leader needs to look at those fundamentals and say, I'm going to do what's best for America, and I'm going to do what I can to help the Ukraine as best as possible. But if my continued blanket help actually leads to their demise and the potential loss of America's interest, then we're going to have to change course. And that's where I think that Biden needs to do something, needs to do some reevaluating in the light of this failed offensive. But before we get into the next year, especially, I think it's time to reevaluate what America's policy is going to be, because we can't just continue to go down a road to sound tough that actually has a higher chance of harming America's interest instead of helping it. And that's today's deep dive.